Dennis has been off for too long.
I forgot how to do this.
Speak into that microphone. I'm
you don't have to be
reporter.
like rubbing your nose on it, but as long as you're addressing it and speaking clearly, I think we're okay.
I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
And welcome back to the very first edition of the Politics Unplugged podcast of the new year 2025. I am joined and honored, Stacey Barchenger with the Arizona Republic. Stacey, Happy New Year. Thanks for stopping by here. And what better way to start and ring in 2025 by talking about who's got aspirations for 2026?
Yeah, sorry, 2025. We're already looking to 2026 over here.
You get a couple political reporters, and this is like 20 odd-numbered years. We just really don't care about you.
Do they even exist?
No.
I mean, technically, but...
They only exist as a way to get to an even-numbered year.
Absolutely. Sorry to everyone listening who is not a politics reporter.
I know, right? Right. I mean, there's that legislature that's going to start up here soon. But, we care about who's going to be running in 2026. And you put together a year-end or year-beginning list of looking forward and who's got, aspirations for 2026. So, obviously, these are people you're going to have to be following or looking at. And if you're listening to this podcast, I'm assuming you're kind of into politics, or you've got trouble sleeping, and this helps you zonk out. But I'm thinking that we're going to be watching some of these folks, and you wrote a really great article on some names here to watch. First of all, let's get your opinion. I think who's the top name to be watching here in 2025 as we start gearing up for the next gubernatorial run.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you clarified gubernatorial, because this is kind of like, we have all of our statewide offices that are on the ballot in 2026. So there's lots of things taking shape behind the scenes right now. But obviously the governor's office, most high profile, my main focus. I think you got to be watching what Karen Taylor Robeson does this year and next. She, last year helped Republicans grow their majorities in the legislature. She got this endorsement from Donald Trump in December, very, very early, could help clear the pack. We know she's got the money to make a solid run for the governor's office. And so it's just a matter of who does she see that might challenge her for the GOP nomination.
Yeah, and she ran a couple of years ago and lost in the primary for Kari Lake. What's going to be different this time around?
Well, Kari Lake is probably out of the picture.
I'm sure. Yeah, she's. I mean, but what's different this time around? What would make her more successful this time around than the last time?
Well, I think the Trump endorsement is very valuable, regardless of when it happens, and it happened very early. So I think there is that. I think on the Republican side, you see more early coalescing than you did in 2022. And, the party has sort of been transforming and dealing with this sort of array of ideologies within the Republican Party. And so I think you see recognition of that from Karen and party leadership and trying to bring that all together now. Really early.
It's almost like kind of reminiscent of back when Ducey was first running for office. I mean, he had really consolidated all the donors, all the endorsements, everything really early. So this was 2014. So by the time any real competition jumped in the race at the toward the end of 2013 or the beginning of 2014, like Ducey had already locked everything up and basically had cleared the primary field for himself. I'm starting to get the sense now, and you alluded to this, that Karen Taylor Robeson may be on her way to doing that. What's your sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think she is a strong candidate and probably learned some lessons from 2022 about challenges for her as a sort of more traditional Republican. And, those are still challenges she'll have to face. After Donald Trump endorsed her, you saw folks like Senator Jake Hoffman who really pushed back on that and called out Trump and said, what are you doing? She is a rhino. She does not deserve this endorsement. So it's not to say that the path is clear. There will be some fence mending I think she has to do with that side of the Republican Party. But that's why I think it's important that we're talking about this now. Probably seems really early, but like this is the groundwork that's happening behind the scenes now. And so I think it's important for folks to know about it.
Yeah, I mean, election junkies out there. I mean, if you don't know these odd numbered years, this is where a lot of action happens. It's off radar. It doesn't get attention, but a lot of things are set up in these years for those runs. It's funny you bring up, Jake Hoffman calling Karen Taylor Robson a rhino. I don't even know what that is anymore, what that means anymore. I mean, rhino, labeling someone a rhino, I don't know what it is. It's like, I don't know, like a targeting penalty in college football. Heyo, I'm here all week. I really don't know what that means anymore. I mean, it just seems like if it's a Republican and you don't like another Republican, then you're a rhino. Because Karen Taylor Robson has been pretty consistent. She comes from a traditional long line of Republican family members and supporting Republicans for a long time.
Including Donald Trump for many years and financially fundraising for him, right?
Yeah, and so, it tells me a lot, that maybe Hoffman still has some designs to try to make that run for governor. I just don't know if he could be very successful at it at this point.
I mean, I think, that's certainly a name that has come up as I've been talking to people about who might want to be or might want to run for governor in 26. Jake Hoffman's name does come up. I think he represents a different sort of like faction of the Republican Party, but, he also has his own set of challenges. Namely, he's facing criminal charges brought by a Democratic Attorney General Chris Mays related to the 2020 election. And, that case is viewed very differently depending on where you're at politically. But, you have an indicted person making a run for office in a very closely split state. I think that's a difficult path.
Does Karen Taylor Robson have to do anything this year to kind of some image work? I mean, she is seen as somebody with incredible wealth. I mean, this is a person, I believe she owns a yacht, maybe two.
I mean, she has incredible wealth.
Has incredible wealth.
Seen with it and has it.
And has it. To me, that could, money can solve a lot of problems, but that kind of money can create its own problems,
Yeah, I don't have a good understanding of, what a Karen Taylor Robson campaign, what the pitch to voters will be. But I do think, this is the time that you see her working behind the scenes within Republican circles and more broadly with donors to make her pitch. In 2022, I mean, she did largely self-fund, like over $20 million of her own money. But she did also try to get some amount of public support. She said that was important. I imagine you would see that again. But we haven't really seen that sort of take shape publicly yet.
And it's hard when you're known for having that kind of wealth. And look, we understand, she was a successful businesswoman before she met her husband, all this other stuff, but like she's known for having incredible wealth. It makes it hard to pitch donors out there. It's like, hey, donate to my campaign. You mentioned she self-funded, I think, the tune of like $22 million last time around. What's the incentive for someone to donate money to a campaign like that?
Yeah, and that's maybe that's a good point. Maybe that's one of the challenges is, does the public know who Karen Taylor Robson is, right? You've heard her name. She went to ASU with Doug Ducey, and that's how they know each other. They came up, knew each other for decades since then. Yeah, I know, cute fact. But so, maybe she has some education to do to the public about who she is beyond a successful businesswoman, a mother, a real estate developer, all of these things, and about why she wants to lead the state.
Yeah. So, I mean, 2025 could be really important for her. And I think there is some image stuff for her and maybe some reintroduction to the public that she could start doing this time around that maybe was lacking last time. And again, start at the beginning. What's different? Obviously, Carrie Lake was, lover, hater, an incredible communicator, political chops out there. It's a different animal. She's not going to be facing that this time around. Somebody else on your list here you mentioned, and I feel like she's just the victim of poor timing sometimes, is Kimberly Yee.
Mm-hmm.
She's been a state lawmaker. She's been the treasurer. She's second two-term treasurer. I just feel like 2025. Like if she has higher aspirations, it may not be for governor. It probably should be for Secretary of State. What do you think?
I don't know. So I reached out to her asking about, what her plans were. Obviously, she's term limited, so she's out at the end of 26 as treasurer. Her statement was, I've won with big margins statewide so far. I hope to keep, leading the state in the way that she has been doing. And so definitely higher aspirations there. I see her making a run for the governor's office.
Yeah. I know she. I know she wants that. I mean, she has run for. I believe she tried to make a run for the Senate before, or
she was in the legislature,
yeah.
But she ran for governor in 22.
That's right.
Of course, as we were talking about, that was a really crowded GOP primary, and you had Carrie Lake with the Trump endorsement and all the name recognition from being on TV here. So that was a very difficult primary for anyone who wasn't named Carrie Lake, and to include Kimberly Yee. I mean, she didn't see fundraising support. So that I think would be a big challenge if it is Kimberly Yee and Karen Taylor Robeson dominated.
What would she have to do this year though to change the momentum? Because obviously she ran for governor in 2022. Mm-hmm. She wants that job, but she could talk about all the margins and heavy margins she won, but that was largely just partisan voting down ticket. With voters probably don't know much about her; they're just voting R or D down ticket. What would she have to do this year to make herself competitive or be seen as a viable contender or challenger to Karen Taylor Robeson?
She needs to introduce herself to the people of Arizona, which, as treasurer, it's obviously an important position, but probably not one that, Arizonans pay a ton of attention to because it is, you're the bank accounts. You don't set policy. Although, Kimberly Yee would point to examples of when she is, defending taxpayer dollars. And so I think you need to, if you are Kimberly Yee, you need to also start early, get your message out there, see what money you can get, because that's such an important factor when you're running against, someone that is wealthy. And then
when you're running against somebody with money, it's good to have money.
Yeah, I know. Hot take to start the year here. So
I was on vacation for a long time, so yeah, right.
Turns out money in politics matters.
What?
I know.
What? Did you hear that, Colin? Hot take
I
here,
had
man.
no idea. That's great. Thank you.
But yeah, we know Karen. We know Kim Yee wants that. She's run for it before. I'm just skeptical that she can put herself in that position to be seen as a viable, challenger to Karen Taylor Robeson. Because Karen Taylor Robeson, again, she seems to have locked up that Trump endorsement. Although you always kind of say it's a soft endorsement thing because he can change his mind at any time, or just endorse multiple people. As we saw, we've seen this before.
Right.
I'm endorsement A, and this is endorsement B.
Right.
But I just the fundraising. Can you get that message out there? Introduce yourself, who you are. I just think she's better suited probably if she wants to keep, serving the public and, is running maybe for Secretary of State and just keep moving up that ladder that way. But, that's why I report on politics,
Dennis Welch for governor 2026.
No, God, no. I really don't understand people who run for these offices. I just don't understand it at all.
Wait, really? Why?
The amount of questions you get from people like you and me and any good thing you've done in your life can be turned into a bad thing by your political opponents, and every bad thing you've done in your life can be turned into something criminal or something like that. I really don't know why these folks do it.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other podcast.
I would actually love to interview you as a candidate. So
no.
Let's do it.
No. No, it'll be like, next question. How about interview Colin? I've been pushing Colin.
Let's get him out here.
I've been
Colin?
pushing him.
No.
I mean, I could.
No.
I think you'd be a solid treasurer
Okay, sure.
or mine inspector.
I think mine
Mine
inspector
inspector.
would be more up my alley. Math was never my strong suit, so I'm not sure treasurer.
Math wasn't my strong suit, but digging holes.
I
I'm
wouldn't
your
be
man.
dishonest. I would just be bad at the math as treasurer.
I don't think treasurer. Those offices kind of run on their own. I really don't know how much work you have to do as a treasurer.
So I'm sure Kimberly Yee would dispute that take
I'm sure
in a
she
second,
would. I'm
Dennis.
sure she would. But we know from the county stuff, like the row offices of the county, we've seen testimony like they run pretty much on their own. I'm assuming. I would wonder if that's the same with the state. I mean, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but is like Kim Yee, sitting in her office, like, no, go long on Apple, on Apple investments today. I don't know. I don't think so.
Sounds like you have some tough questions to ask this year.
Yeah, because she'll be calling me right back. So, you also had another name on your list. This guy's like a perennial, would be, right? Jason Beck.
Yeah.
I've heard his name out there for a while for much higher office and stuff like that. He's been out there for a little while. Who is he, and why does he keep making these lists, and why does he keep being rumored out there for running for bigger office?
Yeah, so he's currently the mayor of Peoria. He was elected in 22. You might know him. He leads this company, 2IR Tactical. They make bulletproof vests and shields for police and military. As you say, certainly has had higher political aspirations. It's just like we're talking about, what's the path there? He bills himself as this outsider candidate, which I think there are signs voters really like that right now. And so, maybe that's one angle. But, my sense is after this Trump endorsement for Karen Taylor Robeson, if he was thinking of a run for governor, that got sort of scattered. So where does he fit in? Again, just someone I'm keeping an eye on in the coming cycles.
Yeah, because folks like him, he's been mayor. He's run a successful company. By the way, that company also frequently hosts big-time political rallies from Donald Trump to J.D. Vance.
Yeah, right.
I mean, everybody's been down there. So he definitely has some connections and stuff like that. But I don't see them running for a lower statewide office like a treasurer or secretary of state or anything like that. I think he's somebody too probably should be waiting and looking for timing for something that opens up out there.
I mean, that's such a big issue, looking at 2026. It's less exciting because it's a little more set. But on the Democratic side, you have Governor Hobbs, Secretary Fontes, and Attorney General Mays, who are all, looking for a second term. But there was this talk for a while about is Fontes going to challenge Hobbs? Can
we talk about that a little bit at the end of this? Because that was
sure.
so amazing. I love that story so much.
I'm grateful for him for picking up the phone that morning. So
I love that little intrigue so much. It was such a little short-lived story, at least for now.
Yeah.
So, and you also got GOP party chairwoman Gina Swoboda on the list.
Yeah, these are not for governor's offices, but, I think Gina is looking for another term as party chair. I know she's been approached about running for Secretary of State. She worked in that office many years ago for Democrats and Republicans. I think she's seen very favorably because of the election results in 24. So I think there's certainly a future there for her. It's just figuring out, what she wants to do, and Secretary of State would be a shoo-in for that, I got to think. And then in other races, of course, Attorney General, I put Warren Peterson on my list because as the Senate president, I think lots of what he does this year, I will be looking at to see how it might affect a run against Mays in 26.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously he's got designs on running for that office. I've also heard whispers that he might be looking at the governor's race as well. Have you heard anything on that?
I mean, I've heard it, but as of right now, I take him at face value, which is he is considering, and I think it was probably likely how he phrased it, a run for Attorney General.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. What what would you be looking for this year then as he tries to put himself in position? Because it seems like Chris Mays, at least with Democrats in the base, she's really popular with them right now, and she does a great job getting press. She gets her name out there all the time. What would Mr. Peterson have to be doing to set himself up?
Maybe we'll see him compete more, and he'll talk to us more at the end of a Senate session. Senate President? No, I mean, I think you see him try to strike the balance, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to score some wins with a Democratic governor, so you have things to take to your base, but also show your base that you're still fighting these like culture war issues. Yeah. I think it's noteworthy that he put Senator Hoffman back in charge of the director nominations committee this year. My colleague Ray Stern had a similar story to mine about people to watch in 2025 for 2025. And Hoffman is, definitely on there. He is an antagonist to the governor's office. In his world, or in his view, he is doing accountability on her agency director picks. But certainly, I think Peterson has probably scored some points by putting the leader of the Freedom Caucus in that very powerful position. So I'm fascinated to see how Peterson manages the array of GOP ideologies this year, and how that impacts what he does in 2026.
Yeah, and also you mentioned Ray's list. He's so stuck in this year.
I know.
Come on, Ray. Also on this list, come on, Ray. For the record, I love Ray. But I was going to say, also on this was Jake Hoffman in that too. Mm-hmm. Is somebody to watch, and it's going to be interesting to see how he navigates this, because I know Hoffman is connected to Turning Point, mm-hmm. and Turning Point has been rumored to Charlie Kirk has been looking at maybe running for governor. It's like, those two need to figure something out if that's going to happen. Yeah. But also, non-election stuff to be related to be watching is watch Jake Hoffman in the Senate this year, the state Senate, because the Freedom Caucus numbers have diminished a little bit. It's going to be fascinating to see how he plays the hand he was dealt this year.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm most excited to watch in the session that starts in a week. And, it's interesting, the Trump endorsement of Karen Taylor Robeson was at a Turning Point event, which I think is probably noteworthy if Charlie Kirk is gunning for that endorsement. Although, of course, it's, maybe 2 endorsements are on the way. Who knows? But maybe I do think that...
couple 2-3 endorsements.
Everyone in the GOP primary gets an endorsement.
You all get endorsed. All right, before we let you go, let's circle back. Oh, my gosh. The soap opera between Fontes and Katie Hobbs was super fun. Have we seen the end of it?
I don't know.
Because, like, the recap, if you haven't been following this, I mean, Fontes basically told you that he was thinking about running for governor in a couple of years.
Yeah.
He's since walked that back, right?
Well, yeah, so there was a Politico did a story that he had been approached to run for governor. And this was a perceived weakness from Governor Hobbs, or on the part of Governor Hobbs. So Politico publishes the story, and I, the next morning, pick up the phone and call Adrian Fontes to see what he has to say. And it very much is, yes, people asked me about running.
I feel a draft.
Yeah. Probably going to run for Secretary of State, and then he made it official, telling the Washington Post that later. But, those are some pretty interesting dynamics there about talking about that publicly. So definitely some aspirations there. But I do, it's probably like too early to talk about 2030, right?
I'm not even emotionally ready for the start of the legislature next week. I can't even get ready for 2030. But no, it's just, it was kind of unique. I mean, he's just kind of openly talking about this. In, Hobbs' world, like, pretended not to freak out, but we're like, what the heck is going on here? He's going to get, trounced and all this stuff. I just think that even the fact that he was just talking about, just musing about this, points to some real problems that Katie Hobbs has to deal with this year. So let's wrap up on this. Katie Hobbs running for a second term. No question about that. What does she have to accomplish this year?
I mean, I think she needs more to take to voters to show about what she has done and what she has accomplished. And, 2023, 2024, she was able to blame Republican majorities for not getting major policy wins. She tried to flip the legislature, did not do that.
Brutal year for her.
Right. And so what does she do differently this year that she can then take to voters and the swingy voters, right? Like she will talk about repealing the pre-statehood abortion ban. Absolutely, like a major and important policy change when it comes to her base of voters and people in the middle. But that, Prop 139 passed. So what does she take to voters this year? And are vetoes enough? I don't know how voters will decide that, but if she gets to 300 vetoes, is that enough to make her a good governor?
Well, and some of those vetoes may be unpopular with voters. I mean, the Border Security Act. I mean, she vetoed that. They put it on the ballot, and it passed overwhelmingly with voters. I mean, that could be a political vulnerability for her.
Yeah,
I would think that one of the things she's going to have to focus on is Prop 123 extension. Get that on the ballot. She can maybe take that. I'm fascinated to watch how she navigates border issues.
Yeah,
I mean, it was no coincidence that a week after the election, she was down in Nogales.
Like days later. And taking, the contrast here, you have Chris Mays inviting reporters to her office to talk about how she is going to be this roadblock for the Trump administration here. They are, not deporting people unless they go through her, and she's not going to back down. And then you have days later, or maybe before, fuzzy on the timeline there. Yeah. But then you have Governor Hobbs at the border saying, I'm going to work with anybody, including Trump, and taking the sort of like waffly stance on his deportation plans. Yeah. She was saying even what Trump is going to do for deportations isn't entirely clear, so she's not going to weigh into hypotheticals, but it absolutely was a moderate middle ground and a non-committal middle ground. Yeah. And that's why we're talking about 2026.
I know,
right?
and it reinforces that narrative with her, the negative narrative that she is not a good leader. When you're not taking a position, when you're waffling like that, it's like take a position on that, and it reinforces that kind of attitude. So it's gonna be fascinating to watch. Katie Hobbs become this border hawk over this year.
Yeah, we will see.
As she gets ready for 2026. I think. Was it your story or Ray's story? There was a lobbyist, I think Kevin Domena was quoted as saying she's got to be seen as she's the one making decisions.
Yeah, Ray had that this morning.
Not her chief of staff, Chad Campbell. In doing stuff like that, I think, waffling on that doesn't help with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I do, she is doing that because she sees some appeal there. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's probably a play for these like moderate independents who voted for the abortion ballot measure last year and also the border ballot measure. But I'm just really fascinated to see how that translates as this year goes forward.
Yeah.
Once President Trump is sworn in again and starts carrying out his plans, how she reacts to that is one of the top things to watch.
100%. And with that, I think we'll just wrap it up right there. Thank you so much for stopping by here to start off 2025.
Happy New Year.
Happy
2026.
I love starting off 2025 by going into 2026. So thank you so much for helping me do that. I love talking about that kind of stuff. So
of course, thanks
as always a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And welcome back to the second half of the Politics Unplugged podcast. As always, joined by Colin Stanton, producer extraordinaire. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Did you have a good time?
I had a good time. Yeah, we've been off for a while.
Yeah.
Our first show in a few weeks.
Any highlights, any lowlights?
No, had a great time. Family was around. Enjoyed Christmas. Yeah. Tried to get my dog through New Year's Eve with the aerial combatants in the neighborhood.
God, it sounded like
miserable.
Man, yeah, I live in downtown Phoenix, and man, it sounded like Baghdad 2005 downtown, like shock and awe.
Yeah. And my dog can't handle it at all. He hates it. So
no, this is weird. And telling. I found out my dog is Joan of Bark is very good with the dull thudding. Right, it's the sharp sounds of guns going off.
Oh yeah,
because you'll hear this boom, 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 and then you hear the sharp gun go off. That's what gets her all freaked out.
Yeah. Now my dog Lainey, it can be way off in the distance. She hears a bang. She's not going outside for the next few hours. It's just shaking.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
And, we always talk about pets. The other thing, too, is, I've been aware of, too, there's a lot of veterans out there, too, who get triggered on nights like that, and who can be. And, I just feel awful for them,
Yeah, we have a neighbor who's in that situation. The guy across the street from him lights off mortars every holiday. Yeah.
Good God.
Yep.
There's a word for a man that does that.
Yes, it's been called it a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's aware of this, I'm sure, and still sets off mortars.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Boy.
I have a feeling it will resolve itself violently at some point. It's come close a few times already. Yeah.
Oh, dude. I am so sorry about that. Hey, man, before we start getting into, we've got another list here to start off the year. Before we get into that, anything stand out to you politically over the break?
I think my favorite moment was when Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk went on Twitter announcing that, well, that we're going to keep the good immigrants. The good immigrants, we're not touching the visas.
Yeah.
We need them. And we realized that most of our followers are anti-immigrant. We need to understand that Americans are too stupid and lazy to work for companies like ours.
Oh, boy.
So those visas are going to keep running, which didn't seem to go over very well.
Didn't sit well with MAGA.
No. And when
nor
someone,
should it have.
and Elon told one of them on Twitter in fairly colorful terms that he could go F himself in his face, I believe, was the exact phrase, if he didn't like their policy of increasing immigrants.
Oh, boy. Yeah, not...
I don't recall that being part of the campaign.
Not a good look.
Yeah, when Vivek's explaining, no, the problem with Americans is you're letting your kids play, and they're having fun with their friends, and maybe they're playing football when they should be working with a math tutor.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't come off as judgy or, elitist.
No.
I thought Democrats were the party of elitists.
No. Well, when you are handing over the reins to billionaire tech guys from foreign countries.
Yeah.
Who don't really want to hire Americans.
Oh, boy.
That's what you get.
And did by and large, did you do a good job, like unplugging? I know this is unplugged, but
I was solidly unplugged.
Yeah.
I'm still mostly unplugged.
Yeah, I thought it was refreshing, to just get away from it. There was I was on vacation basically for 2 weeks. There was a good solid week where I was just out.
Yeah.
Now it's easier to do that time of year because there's not a whole lot happening in that world.
Yeah.
But it was nice just not following the TikTok of the news cycle.
Yeah. It's been great.
Yeah.
I've almost entirely forsaken Twitter at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't posted on Twitter in years, but I was at least checking it constantly. I'm not even doing that now.
No, it's just not. It's not productive. We could do a whole podcast on that, on Twitter versus Blue Sky.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to do a segment on Politics Unplugged, the TV show, or maybe even a podcast here talking about that. But I have just found that at least with X, it's non-productive.
Yes, there's no point to it.
It's
people performing and bots, and it has nothing to do with real life. And you discover pretty quickly that when you walk away from it, there's no harm there. It's strictly benefit.
Well, I mean, for example, we've got some producers and reporters here who are just tweeting out air quality numbers.
Yeah.
That were bad.
Yes.
because of that over the past week, and they were getting ripped on Twitter by bots.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point?
Yeah. I don't know.
So and so with a long number after their name, obviously a bot. Like,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
Why am I
Kyle 8942
Yeah. Like
thinks you're an asshole for tweeting out
Air
that
quality
our air
numbers.
quality is not very good.
Yeah, but who cares?
Yeah.
You want to call me an asshole if it's like so and so and like it's a real person. Like, that's fine. That's fair.
Yeah.
You can have your opinions and whatnot.
Yeah.
I can deal with that. It's just there's just so much of that on Twitter. It's the new Facebook.
Yes.
At some point, a few years back, you just start realizing like Facebook is just,
Yeah.
there's not much there.
And they're feeding you a constant stream of stuff you don't care about that's designed strictly to make you angry.
Yeah. So it's nice. And, I'm assuming, Blue Sky's obviously a lot more left.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Blue Sky will get there eventually, but, I posted a few things over there and, guess what? Yeah. I don't see that kind of bot activity over there.
No, it's not there. They've taken steps to avoid it.
Yeah,
I mean, you post something, you can get some actual interaction with people as opposed to name calling from bots with blue checks next to their name.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we've got a new list.
yeah, your sort of annual tradition.
Yeah.
Looking back at remembering the musicians we lost in the previous year. You've done this in your own way for a while. This is the second year for the podcast.
Yeah. It dates back to some friends of mine. Pure happenstance. Pure, just what it is we have an annual RIP Christmas show where we say goodbye to Christmas, and we also remember the first Christmas without the musicians or some of the bands that have been important to us in our lives. And we go out and we play music from those bands or those artists, and that's the RIP Christmas tradition.
Yeah. So we're doing that for the pod. We did it last year. We're doing it again this year. And happy to say it was a little hard to put together the list.
Yes.
We're at a point where a lot of music legends are aging, and thankfully they're still aging. They're not, most of them.
Yes. They're still getting older.
We still had, sadly, plenty of names to choose from, but,
Yeah. You don't want it to be a banner year because that means you lost. I mean, remember that year? I think like Prince died. I think that year was like just a bunch of people.
It felt like it was one after another.
Yeah.
This was not that, but still plenty of people worth remembering.
Yeah. So
and we'll throw a playlist of these on Blue Sky.
Yeah. So
put it together on Spotify. We'll post a link on Blue Sky.
So how do you want to do this? You want to go through?
You want to just go one? We each got 10.
Yeah.
So you do one, I do one?
Yeah, let's do that. And I don't have mine ranked
in mine
any
are fairly
order.
random.
Yeah. So let's go for it.
All right. Me first?
You go first, man.
This is probably the one that hit me the hardest. Jerry Miller of the Untouchables. There was also a Jerry Miller of Moby Grape who died. I don't know Moby Grape. The Untouchables were an LA ska band in the very early 80s, sometimes credited as being the first American ska band. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but growing up in Southern California and being fans of the Specials and English Beat, the whole mod scene and all that.
The two-tone scene.
Yeah. The Untouchables were our version of that.
Yeah.
Played Orange County in LA all the time, saw them repeatedly. Really great band. If you know any song by them, it's probably Free Yourself. That got some play on MTV. Jerry Miller, their singer, who was still a member of the band, they still play, and he was the sole remaining vocalist, I believe, from their early days. He died in October after a long illness, so
yeah.
Saddened by that.
For me, I'll start the list off too. Like for me, the most personal one for me was Bam Bam, the drummer from JFA. Old school Phoenix-based punk rock band. JFA stood for Jodie Foster's Army.
Yeah,
it was named after I believe Hinckley, the would-be assassinator of Ronald Reagan. He did that to impress Jodie Foster. But Bam Bam, the drummer, he passed away the past year. I didn't know him very well, but he was always kind of a fixture on the punk rock scene, kind of an eccentric guy, known by that point. When I was playing around a lot, known at that point, kind of as just like, again, this eccentric guy who just would be at all these shows wearing fancy weird hats. But like, yeah, he always was kind of bit of a troubled soul from what I heard and remembered. But it's still sad, to see him go. And JFA was, it's one of those gateway bands in punk rock. You kind of start with Sex Pistols, Clash, and then you move on to like Minor Threat and these other things, and then
Dead Kennedys and
that kind of stuff. And at some point around there, you discover JFA.
Yeah. A couple years ago, when my youngest was a senior in high school, he had a buddy who'd come by the house now and then who had a JFA sticker on his car. I was always kind of impressed at like 18, gotten that deep into it.
And they're still around, but JFA now is, I believe, based out of Southern California, like Orange County and all that kind of stuff. No original members, I believe.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of it's just kind of a brand now, a business, the JFA business or something like that. Because you put them on a poster somewhere, you're guaranteed X number. A few people are going to show up and buy some beer that night or something like that.
All right. Slim Dunlap, guitarist for the Replacements.
Oh yes,
the Replacements had as good a 3-album run as just about any band has ever had. Let It Be, Tim, and Pleased to Meet Me.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't play on those. That was Bob Stinson, and then Bob got kicked out after Pleased to Meet Me. Because
Bob ended up coming back though.
No, Bob ended up dying.
Oh, that's okay. Who came back though? There's somebody that came back for the reunion.
Replacements.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, no, it was Chris Mars on drums, Paul Westerberg, Tommy Stinson, Bob Stinson, Tommy on bass, Bob on guitar. Bob remarkably was too drunk for the Replacements, a legendary disaster of a band because of the drinking problem. They booted him, replaced him with Slim Dunlap, and then Bob died not all that long after. So Slim only played on a couple. He played on the Pleased to Meet Me tour and then on a couple albums that were not very good, but not because of him.
Yeah.
Was credited as being a great stabilizing force and I guess a real fixture on the Minneapolis music scene. Good guitarist, apparently great guy. Suffered a stroke more than 10 years ago and had essentially been, I think, in a very, very bad place for the last decade. Died a few months ago.
Well, and we had overlap on that. Sorry, I think we might have talked about this, but I didn't avoid that. He was on my list as well. Which is fine. I think it'll make this conversation a little bit shorter. But yeah, they were an important band, I think, for a lot of folks, and opened me to the world of the old Minneapolis scene.
Yeah, the Replacements and Husker Du,
and those were important bands.
Yes,
and you said three record run. That was a great 3-record run. To me, it's amazing they were able to get 3 records because that was one of the most dysfunctional bands you'll ever hear about or read about.
Their live shows were legendary and not necessarily in a good way. Yeah. Supposedly on a good night, they were great. I saw them once. I did not see them on a good night. I saw them on a more typical night. The question was, at what point were they too drunk to perform?
Yeah.
And I think their average show was about the time they hit the encores, they were so drunk they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
I believe the night I saw them, they opened with the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Which gives you some idea of how drunk they were by the time the show started. And it was kind of a shambles. And people act like it's cute. I don't know. They were such a great band on record, and the fact that they were just sort of drunk and pathetic after a while loses its charm.
Yeah, and the thing about it, it's cute if it's if something happened very infrequently.
Yeah.
Right? There's a legendary story about Thelonious Monk, the old jazz great. Yeah. Showing up late to Carnegie Hall one night, like an hour late or something like that. Everybody is grumbling and whatnot, shows up, picks the piano, the thing you sit on, and just throws it into the middle of the Steinway and at the piano and walks off stage. And I heard someone telling this story, was a big fan of Thelonious Monk, and then the punchline on the end of the story was the greatest goddamn chord I ever heard. I mean,
Yeah.
every now and then, but the thing is, the replacements. I mean, you would get so drunk, like, was it worth it? I mean, when people go to see bands more so than to hear bands.
Yeah.
But if you're that messed up, you're like,
Yeah.
what am I doing here?
Yeah. No, I love the band. That was not a particularly great night.
No. And if people are paying to show up, you have to respect that a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's always a bummer to me when I hear about stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go. So what else you got?
Shel Talmy.
Okay.
He was a producer for the Kinks and the Who early on. So he produced My Generation, Can't Explain, All Day and All of the Night, You Really Got Me. Pretty much all the Kinks singles through like Waterloo Sunset, which to me is as beautiful a song as anyone's ever recorded.
Yeah.
So he was in his 80s. He was, good long life. But the music he produced shaped my musical taste as much as anything. And did some other bands, the Easy Beats, some others, but the early Who and the early Kinks, it's tough to beat those.
Love the early Kinks. That was a great band.
Yeah.
Maybe an underappreciated band in the history of rock and roll. I mean, they were that bridge. Some people have credited them for kind of being the first punk band. To some sense, just the attitude and the way they played, they're just a great band.
Yeah.
I've got also on my list Mojo Nixon.
Yeah.
And again, man, like when I moved out here in the late 80s, just a young high school kid, it seemed like he played here a lot. And it seemed like I saw Mojo Nixon a lot, be it at a club, be it at the old KUKQ Fest. I believe it was a KUKQ Fest I saw him play at. Just really great, just absurd. These absurd songs that were funny and hilarious. And it was a good mix of like rockabilly and punk, kind of psychobilly is what it kind of turned out to be. And, I was kind of sad when I learned that he died. And, he was 66. And,
Not that old. Yeah.
Not that old. I don't know how crazy his life was, but behind the music, as they would say. But he was part of that soundtrack of the first few years I was here and first few years I was going to shows like that.
Yeah.
It's just like this guy is just wild on stage and his songs are just kind of crazy. It was different and I loved it. And, it was real sad for me to see him go.
Yeah. Immortalized in the Dead Milkmen lyrics from Punk Rock Girl.
Oh, yeah.
They would go to a music store and they ask for Mojo Nixon, and the clerk says, "He don't work here." And say, if you ain't
Ask
got
for
Mojo Nixon, then your store could use some fixing.
Yeah.
All right. Next for me, another producer, Frank Farian.
Ooh, nice.
Producer for a band called Boney M back in the 70s that had a hit with Daddy Cool. And the whole thing with Boney M was they just hired like a male model. Frank Farian himself did the vocals and stuff, and it was all studio musicians. And they hired this cool-looking model and two women to lip sync to the songs. And so Boney M was all studio stuff with these fake people performing. And had some hits and were big in Europe. And so he did it again with Milli Vanilli.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So Frank Farian died this year.
I'll stick with my producer, Steve Albini.
Yeah.
A legendary producer, most notably known for the guy who produced Nevermind for Nirvana.
Was it Nevermind or was it In Utero? I think Butch Vig did Nevermind.
Oh, that's right. You're right. In Utero.
Yes.
So he's probably more known for stuff like that, but he did have a band that was one of the kind of on the avant-garde of industrial called Big Black.
Yeah.
They were a great Chicago band, and Albini really had a punk rock kind of work ethic. You can see some interviews with him, and he would talk to folks about how much he would charge, he wasn't taking percentage of record sales, which he could have done with the Nirvana thing. He was just charging a hard rate, just a hard rate. And, he would just want to get paid for the work he did. And it really carried through, I think, most of his career and his life. And if you really, go through, if you're interested in seeing more about Steve Albini, don't really recognize the name, go look him up on Wikipedia. And the bands that he worked with is extensive.
It really is, yeah.
And it's impressive.
Yeah.
Really an amazing talent. And again, he had a band that was very influential as well, Big Black, because, again, they were kind of on that avant-garde of that industrial movement that started in the 80s. Yeah,
very much a revered figure in indie circles. And Eric Carmen of the Raspberries.
Yes.
He, intriguing career in as much as the Raspberries were sort of the first great power pop band of the 70s. Their song "Go All the Way" is just an absolute classic. And then,
but he's known for like some stuff that ended up on like some cheesy 80 movies.
It's awful. His solo stuff.
Yes,
his stuff with the Raspberries is great. His solo stuff is excruciating.
Yes. What was the one? What's the
All by Myself?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And something in Dirty
Hungry
Dancing.
Eyes, I believe.
Hungry Eyes.
They're terrible. But he'll always have the Raspberries. "Go All the Way" by the Raspberries is like the quintessential great power pop song. And his solo stuff is not. I'll leave it at that.
And you'd mentioned a two-tone band earlier. I'm going to go with the Selectors.
Selector, yeah.
Selector with Gaps, their singer, passing away. This was a band like I really loved that two-tone ska era stuff with the Specials, the Toasters, bands like that. I really, really love those bands.
Beat Madness. Bad Manners.
Ooh, yeah, Bad Manners. Forgot about them.
Yeah.
God, Bad Manners.
Yeah.
That was a good band. That was a good band.
Yeah, Lip Up Fatty.
Madness. So and they were solidly part of that canon.
Yeah,
in there, and it was just sad, to see them go, and a lot of memories to listen to those bands. I don't think I saw Selector.
Yeah, I never did.
I ended up seeing a lot of those bands, including Bad Manners and all that other kind of stuff. I think humble brag, I think we played with them because like a lot of those bands during the third wave. A lot of those bands, two-tone bands, the second wave ska kind of reformed to like cash in on the reemergence of ska for the third time. Yeah. And so I believe we might have played with Bad Manners, and we certainly played with some of those bands.
Nice. Duke Fakir of the Four Tops.
There you go.
He was the last surviving Four Top. They still tour. I mean, they played here last year.
They're the No Tops now.
Well,
from the originals.
He was since like 2008. He was the only remaining original.
Yeah, and
so there are no originals. Four Tops were great.
Oh yeah,
of the old like 60s vocal bands, wonderful. The best known was Levi Stubbs, but Duke Fakir, part of the original four.
Which record label were they on? Atlantic?
Boy, I'm not sure.
Were they part of
Motown,
that? Or Motown? Were they Motown?
I think they were Motown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess we could look it up, but that's bad podcasting.
It would. Yeah.
I'm going with Wayne Kramer from MC5.
Yeah.
I mean, Kick Out the Jams.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a band. That band was loud. They were great, and his guitar playing was just like really, really great. The tone for his guitar was aggressive. Again, loud. Yeah. One of those bands, when you kind of start getting into punk rock, people will also say, like, you should give these guys a listen to. Or even metal, like, you should give these guys a listen to. They're kind of precursors for all that kinds of stuff. And obviously, they're probably best known for playing the 68 Democratic Convention, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, where they where they screamed out, "Kick out the jams, MFer."
Yeah. All right. Aston Family Man Barrett. Band leader for Bob Marley and the Wailers.
Yes.
Bass player, was the mentor for Robbie Shakespeare of Sly and Robbie.
Okay.
His nickname was Family Man before he had any kids. And he ended up having 41 children.
Jesus Christ.
But huge part of Bob Marley's sound and the Wailers.
All right, and I'm going to go with Chris Christopherson.
Yeah.
I got to be honest with you. Wasn't a huge fan of his music. I didn't hate his music. I just kind of liked who he was.
Yeah, an amazing figure.
An amazing figure. I know some of his lyrics and what he stood for, and he's just a pretty incredible guy. Like, I don't know how you first heard about Chris Christopherson. For me, it was the movie Taxi Driver.
Yeah, I'm not sure for me.
That was because I was like, Chris Christopherson, Taxi Driver. You're like, okay. And, and it's like, yeah, and it's country and it's old school country. And there are a lot of other country artists that I would listen to before I would be pulling out Chris Christopherson stuff. But like, he always seemed like he was just a good dude who stood by what he thought and believed in. And
Rhodes Scholar.
Yes. Smart dude. Served in the military.
Yeah.
So just an all around decent dude.
Yeah. Wrote me and Bobby McGee wrote Sunday Morning Coming Down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great figure.
And there's a great story about him
that I probably won't repeat.
That we will not repeat
here. That was in reference to Toby Keith, another person who passed that
didn't make my list.
Didn't make my list either.
Yeah, Dale, due respect.
Probably wouldn't have made Chris Christopherson's list. If I can find the anecdote online, I might put a link to it on Blue Sky. I won't share it here. It's a little rude.
It is a little crass.
Yeah. Phil Lesh of the Grateful Dead, bass player for the Grateful Dead.
Okay.
I know you're not much of a Deadhead. I'm not that big a Deadhead, but I spent 10 years of my life in Eugene, Oregon.
Got to respect
it. You get it by osmosis there. You can't really avoid it.
Does it start with, like, you move there, you're not a Dead fan, and then all of a sudden, like, after hearing hundreds of takes of songs, it's like, well, that's not bad.
Yeah. No, you have an image of what they are.
That song's not bad. Next thing you know, you're like...
And then you start hearing some of it and you go, oh, you know what? That's not awful.
Okay.
And then you find some that are actually pretty good. One of the songs that's actually, I think, very good is one that Phil Lesh sang. He generally wasn't the singer, but there's a song called Box of Rain that he sang. It's a great Dead song.
You lost me with the song Box of Rain.
Yeah, I know. What are you going to do? So, yeah, having spent 10 years completely immersed in Grateful Dead culture, and I actually went to like the first 3 songs of a Dead show when I was there because I had to work it. I was working a weekend as a photographer and went in and shot the start of the set.
And to be... I'm sorry to interrupt there.
Oh, no. I was just going to say everyone involved on the band side, because it was in Eugene, to put this in perspective, the Dead would do tours where they would play. They had one where I think they played New York City and Boston and Chicago and Los Angeles and Eugene, Oregon. And the show and when the stop in Eugene, Oregon would be 2 or 3 days at Autzen Stadium.
It's sold out every night. The
football, yes. So in a town of 110,000 people, maybe, they're playing to 50,000 people at the football stadium and doing 3 shows, and probably could have played for 3 weeks if they wanted to.
That's amazing.
Yes. The Grateful Dead is the soundtrack to Eugene, Oregon.
Well, I was just going to quickly say it took me a long time in life to realize that it's not the Dead that I disliked. It was their fans. And because there's a lot of things in life I disliked, like musically, because you couldn't avoid it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things about the world today is you can avoid a lot of crap.
Yeah.
You don't have to listen to the radio anymore.
Yeah.
You're not subjected to that. Well, I was never forced to listen to a lot of Grateful Dead, but for some reason, their damn fans were always there in your face, telling you that you had to listen to this record.
Yeah.
No, I don't, man.
I will tell you from that day of going to the show, showing up in the news van and hauling our gear into the stadium and setting up and shooting, with the help of the band's crew. And it was a Bill Graham production. I think I saw Bill Graham backstage there. Everyone connected to the band was absolutely wonderful. They were great, incredibly professional and welcoming and fabulous. And the fans we walked past to get in and set up were the biggest pack of assholes I've been around.
Yeah, I remember, God, there was a party in high school, and this deadhead guy, his name was Joshua. Not Joshua, Joshua.
Yeah.
And he told me that he was very insistent I listen to Grateful Dead. And then I told him I'm not a fan and I don't have to. And he started telling me, and I'll never forget this, he said, you don't like them because you don't understand infinity.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds about right.
Like, what the?
Right.
Oh, Joshua, if you're out there, hope you're doing well, sir.
Yeah.
Now we're getting kind of bare bones here. I'll save the best person for the last that I've got left here. A guy named Paul Cripple from Reagan Youth. Early punk rock band, 80s punk rock band, one of the first bands you get into. Again, you go back and you listen to it, it's nostalgic. It doesn't hold, a lot of that stuff doesn't hold up today. It's not like I would listen to it today. Like, oh man, this is awesome. Yeah. It's definitely like an angsty, 14-year-old getting into this stuff. So that's all I got to say about that.
All right. Greg Kinn.
Okay.
Of the Greg Kinn Band.
Yep.
Known for one hit song, mostly, I Lost on Jeopardy, or I'm sorry, the Jeopardy. The I Lost on Jeopardy was the stupid Weird Al version.
Al Yankovic, yeah.
The song Jeopardy, which was not close to his best song. His best song was the breakup song. Oh, they don't write them like that anymore. Great song.
That's a good song.
He was one of those guys who was around forever, and I think was essentially a San Francisco bar band, because his time in the spotlight was in the 80s. But when he died, he was 75, I think, and had Alzheimer's. So he was a lot older than who you would think his contemporaries were back in the 80s when he had a few hits. But always seemed like a very nice guy. Had a few good songs. If you've heard the breakup song, it's a great song. It'll be I'll put that on the playlist that we'll put on Blue Sky.
And then and I threw him on the list because, running out, I was like, we were putting together 10 apiece.
Yeah.
I really wasn't a fan of this guy's band. And in fact, he's probably most known for like some infamous incident in Rhode Island, more than anything else. But Jack Russell, no, not the dog, not the dog breed, but he was a singer for a band called Great White.
Yeah.
Like I said,
sort of a second-tier hair metal band of the 80s.
I'd say
became known for
like a B-list hair metal band. Yeah, at best, maybe a C-lister.
Yeah, the Sub Kicks. Level of hair metal.
And back to your point, we started off like, thankfully, it was a slim year for this list, so we didn't, but I threw on there, and if you don't remember what happened, there was back in the 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
They were shooting off real pyrotechnics, real fire in a club.
Yeah, in a small club in Rhode Island.
In a small club in Rhode Island with flammable stuff all over
they had like sound dampening stuff around the stage that immediately went up in flames.
Yeah, and real tragic stuff, man.
Yeah. I mean, the death toll was around 90 or something.
It was gross.
It was horrible.
Yeah, it was just gross.
And they kept touring after that, which I always found peculiar, I guess. Yeah,
now,
if that's who you do, if that's what you do, what are you going to do?
Yeah, but, other than that, like, just they were kind of that band, like, you'd turn on Headbangers Ball, at midnight or whatever, and they'd be on. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Last one for me, John Mayall. Ooh. John Mayall's Blues Breakers. Longtime fans of the podcast may know where we're going to go with this. But the Blues Breakers over the years included a number of notable guitarists. Mick Taylor was in the Blues Breakers before joining the Stones for their run of, I think, the greatest stuff by the Stones, Exile and Sticky Fingers.
Yep.
Peter Greed was guitarist for the Blues Breakers. Later went on to Fleetwood Mac, the early incarnation of Fleetwood Mac, about 10 years before Buckingham and Nicks, where they did some actually really kind of cool stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, Eric Clapton.
Oh, man.
1965, 66.
Can we say not
Clapton is in the Blues
notable?
Breakers.
Take them off the notable and put them on, for at least for the show, The Notorious.
Yes. And this side note to this, another death that didn't make my top 10, but worth mentioning. A songwriter named Will Jennings.
Mm-hmm.
You know what he wrote?
Mm.
He wrote the lyrics to Tears in Heaven, the Clapton song about Clapton's child who died tragically.
Which
I had always assumed that Clapton wrote it.
Oh.
But apparently Clapton wrote the first verse and handed it over to Will Jennings and said, "Hey, could you finish this?"
God,
and Jennings said, "It kind of seems like you should write this."
God, he's just
like,
God.
No,
You know what?
Here,
God.
you do it.
I just I thought I couldn't dislike him anymore. Like, no, I can't even finish a song about the death of my own son that I'm going to cash in on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, Eric.
Stacey was suggesting,
but I can't finish a song about my son, but I can write some lyrics about cocaine. Come on, Eric.
Stacey was suggesting that maybe we should mix things up in the new year by finding someone new to hate. So maybe we'll be open to that. But
yeah, send in your emails. But come on, I guess seriously, the guy couldn't. He didn't even write.
He didn't. He wrote the first verse.
That's awful, man.
Yeah, that's kind of how that struck me too. Anyway.
Oh God. We should have ended on that.
Yeah, sorry. I've been looking forward to springing that on you, though.
No. That's the worst. Ugh.
All right.
Because that's one of the. It's one of the reasons why I'm always skeptical of watching Scorsese flicks. Because you never know when a Clapton song is going to pop up.
At some point, if it's Scorsese, at some point, Layla's popping up. And I don't mind the original Layla. That's like the one. There are like two Clapton songs that I kind of like.
The one with the 19-minute solo?
Yeah. But that was Derek and the Dominoes, and I've always assumed there was a lot of Allman influence there because Layla sounds more like an Allman thing to me. But anyway.
Well, after that freak out on my part, I'm just going to wrap up by original singer for Iron Maiden, Paul Di'Anno. This is a guy, a band for me, it was important. It was, you get into rock and roll and you get into some metal when you're a kid. And then Iron Maiden was kind of that bridge band to get into a little bit more aggressive kind of music. And you bought it because, man, was there ever a band with cooler record covers?
No, it's like the quintessential metal album covers with Eddie.
Yeah,
whatever Eddie is.
Yeah, and I think he was on the first one or two. He died this past year. Too bad. That sucks.
Yeah.
But Iron Maiden's still going strong. Bruce Dickinson was the guy who replaced Paul Di'Anno. Yeah. Paul Di'Anno never really had much of a career after that. The coolest thing about Maiden now is that Bruce Dickinson is the pilot for their commercial jetliner that they own.
Yeah.
I always thought that was pretty damn cool.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, but for me, though, somebody was always sus of one of my other bandmates driving the van to the next station. I don't know how I'd feel about some of the people I've been in bands with flying me to the next station. Yeah. I don't know, dude.
Yeah, that's a high level of faith in the singer.
So, how was last night? Feeling rested, dude? Feeling good, Bruce?
Yeah. So anyway, not a comprehensive list.
No.
But that's our list of people who affected us.
You affected me more with that little anecdote about Eric Clapton not even finishing writing it.
Yeah.
That guy.
All right.
Now let's end it there.
So I'll put up a playlist on Spotify. We'll throw it out on Blue Sky. We're Politics Unplugged on Blue Sky.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for sitting down. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for always being the best producer extraordinaire there is.
Thank you. Good to be back. We're back at it. We'll see you next week.
All right, man.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.